Welcome to the Mistake-Free Real Estate Podcast. I am your host, Mark Lautour, and I am thrilled to be joined today by one of my good friends and friends in the title industry, Marty Albertson. Marty, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Mark. Good to be with you.
Thanks, mate. So really excited to talk today. For those that you don't know, I just want to give a brief overview of Marty's experience. Probably the most highly qualified person to talk about title that I know in the industry. Marty is the Group Senior Vice President for Stewart Title Company, which oversees a huge number of states, more than I can count. Marty, are you currently overseeing around 15 states? Is that close?
Oh, it's more than, it's basically the east half of the country, Mark.
Yeah. So what we really wanted to delve into today was focused primarily around, team building and holding accountable. I know that a lot of our listeners out there are in the position of trying to grow businesses and scale. So Marty, delving right in, how do you evaluate talent?
You know, it's so interesting, Mark. Our careers are a journey. And I spent the first 20 years of my career doing what many of you do, which is overseeing a small team or owning a small business. So the first half of my career was managing a team of 10 to 12 people with one main office. And so I've had to learn different strategies and philosophies as my area of responsibility has grown to multiple branches and then to multiple states and different types of markets. And so my opinion on that has changed a lot over the years, and I've had to learn a lot. But evaluating talent, you can't go to school to learn title and escrow. So probably the best education you could conceivably get would be a law degree. And even that doesn't necessarily prepare you for the industry. So for the most part, in our more senior positions of a escrow officer or a title officer, we really do have to stay within the industry and find people that have a body of work and have experience and a lot of transactional experience. The evaluation of talent that is most exciting is for the more junior positions. And obviously we're most of the time looking for youth, and we're looking for the entry level people that could join our organization, gain the transactional experience from our more senior people over time and over transaction volume being handled, and let those people have a career path to grow in the organization. Hopefully have a knowledge transfer from our more senior people to the more junior people. And so that takes time, and you have to have a long view of that career path and really encourage it and make sure that we're constantly interjecting the organization with enough people that have that runway so that the organization can continue to grow. And so obviously career pathing is a big deal, and succession planning is a big deal. And fortunately, it just happens to be one of those industries where you can't go to parties and really have anybody that wants to hear about title and escrow. But within your own organization, there's so much knowledge, there's so many questions that junior members have, that there is a knowledge transfer that just naturally takes place amongst those team members. So for us, it's really about recruiting people that have experience away from competitors, and it is about finding people with just good basic customer service skills who see that I'm going to learn something new that could be a very good career for me and a good opportunity to grow over time. I would say the biggest struggle nowadays for us is, and I'm not picking on the millennial generation because my kids are millennials and I'm a huge fan, but I'm constantly having to coach them on this takes time. You can't skip too fast in that career path because you have to gain the knowledge from these more senior people. And it doesn't happen as fast as you would like to advance. And so that's probably the hardest struggle today, is getting those junior members to slow down long enough so that their career can advance. And they just need to log the hours to become an expert. They need to handle a high volume of transactions to get all the various experiences that they're going to gain in doing so. So sometimes that junior member of the team period of time needs to be longer than folks would like, but it's going to be much more meaningful to their long-term career if they will stay patient, and because there's no way to skip that part of the process.
Right, but how do you encourage those junior members to stick around and not get poached for, maybe an extra $2 or $3 grand a year, or just a small bump in salary or something? What's the level of engagement that you have, and how do you encourage your middle managers, the ones that are overseeing them on a daily basis, to, not get burnout at an early stage and try and keep that role, because it is a long runway? How do you stop them from burnout?
I mean, there's a washout rate, definitely. There's some people that won't be patient enough. And there are some people that will just chase, a few more bucks. The problem is the place they're going to have the same philosophy about that career path that I do, right? So you might gain a few extra bucks the next year or two, but does it stunt the opportunity for you to continue advancement? And so that's really how you try to get buy-in, is to make sure they see the rest of that career path. Make sure they see the people above them and their ages. At what stage are they in their career? Because then the path becomes a little more clear. But we need to do a better job of this in our organization as well. I mean, this is not easy stuff. This is difficult stuff that requires leadership, and it requires communication. And we want to get better at that as well, but that's literally how it has to work in our industry.
What kind of conversations do you have with the level of operators? Again, just as a group vice president now, you're overseeing states, which obviously have hundreds of offices. In fact, how many offices now are you currently overseeing, as you give a ballpark?
Yeah, it's hundreds.
Hundreds, right? Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So, obviously you're at a level where if you walk into an actual title office that's owned by Stewart, they may not know Marty Albertson, right?
Right.
So a couple of stages removed from the day-to-day operations, how do you manage layers? As an owner, I'm looking to expand and grow, and I'm getting less and less time with the the soldiers of the workforce. How do you engage them? How do you stay engaged as there are more levels of leadership in between you and the soldiers that in the workforce? What are your strategies and the company strategies to either force engagement or promote engagement within the organization?
I think as a leader, as your business grows, and that business could grow into various different revenue streams. That business could grow by additional team members or locations. But the more it grows, the more rapidly it grows, the bigger that problem is for the leader. So for instance, 20 years of my career with one location and a team of 10 to 12 people, I was just the boss, right? Literally, I owned the company. I was the boss. But it didn't make me a good manager or leader of people, because at the time I didn't really have to be. Does that make sense? Yeah. It was a small organization. I just look at what do I have to do differently? And I think that is the natural progression for a business owner or for a leader. And the hardest step for me wasn't the step when I went from being responsible for one revenue stream or one team of people to various teams and various branches. The biggest step for me was when the reality set in that I am now going to lead a leadership team, which is an entirely different job, right? Because the members of the leadership team are now the bosses, or the people that report to them are now the bosses. And so my role changed to communicating in a way where messages cascade down through the layers of management, my role became vision casting, like where are we going, how are we going to get there, but working through others to now accomplish the goals of the company, not necessarily me being a producer individually. It's a gigantic adjustment. And so knowing that how I had always done things before was no longer going to work, that's the period of time when I went out and hired an executive coach. And I just said, here's what the company is asking me to do. I don't know how to get from here to there, but I know I can't do things in the future the way that I've always done them in the past. So I need help figuring out the ways I'm going to communicate, the formation of these teams, who's going to be responsible for what. And that has led to basically how we do things today. And then I'm even having to adjust what we have been doing the past few years just because of the pandemic. I mean, I can no longer travel like I used to, which means I'm not able to gather the same teams of people together and communicate the way I did before. And I'm making changes now where not only do I meet with the folks that report to me, I have to constantly communicate with the people that report to them. And now I'm even going a layer further down to the branch or department level and having conversations with that layer of management who they don't have people coming to town that are more senior in the organization today. I need to hear those people. I need to make sure I know what they're struggling with. I need to make sure they continue to feel appreciated. And so I'm having to switch things up once again, all related to the pandemic. And many of those things you'll find are just more efficient and will probably stick in perpetuity because we'll learn things.
How do you maintain a level of accountability at that branch level when someone's going to walk in? How do you make sure that the end consumer walks away from the title saying, man, Stewart is such a great organization, everything was done with a smile? I mean, you can't control someone else's smile, right? And a lot of times titles, I mean, with all due respect, title's a boring industry, as you said. And at the end of the day, the buyer and seller typically don't care whether it was Chicago or Stewart. But how do you impact upon them that, you know, this is a valuable business? And what does the word accountability mean to you? And how do you have that resonate through the org?
So I think accountability, if you're customer facing, really is about the customer experience and the process by which we deliver our service and products to the consumer. I think at a branch or department manager level, the accountability is totally different because that's more with not only are you motivating your team and supporting that team and advocating for your team, but are you managing that team in a way that helps the overall company accomplish its goals? So that's a different level of accountability and discipline that's required there than the people that are customer facing, because that's mostly about service, mostly about process.
Sure. So let's delve into
you're
that.
You're describing what we work on every day. I mean, this stuff is not easy, right? This is very complex, very difficult, and you're never done. Like this is something you're always working on.
And so so obviously the customer experience that's important, but what I really wanted to delve into today was at that managerial level. When you're working with branch managers or department managers that are in charge of multiple people, how does Stewart promote, or what is your philosophy on engaging them on metrics and holding them accountable to a number when at the end of the day, you know, they may or may not care about that number. They may not be driven by that number, but at the end of the day, it's company first. How do you hold them to that and make sure that they're driving to meet those metrics that ultimately at the CEO level, that's what he's going to be looking at?
I mean, you better be able to describe what success looks like. You need to define what winning looks like. So there have to be some key performance metrics that management can describe that can make sense. Otherwise, you always have that layer of management that receives a P&L and they go straight to the profit line. That's not how I look at a P&L, because it doesn't tell the story, right? I want to see trends, and I want to see all these key metrics, because if you get those right, the bottom line takes care of itself, right? So we know a swim lane of acceptable labor costs that would be appropriate to achieve the type of margin that looks like winning to us, right? We know in every other operating expense, a swim lane for, what percentage could a branch location spend on rent? What percentage could they spend on total employee cost? What percentage could they spend on promotional items, right? All those key metrics. And so it is about making sure people understand, if you would just improve this number, then this would be the cause and effect. And I can remember people in my position 15, 20 years ago during an economic downturn, or a time when my numbers weren't in line, teaching me that secret sauce of not focusing on revenue or profit, but focusing on the one thing that was creating a drag on the organization. And that does take experience, and it does take time, because you can't always see it when you're managing an office or a team. It doesn't stick out. It's not obvious.
Yeah,
but for us, there's 5 or 6 key things like that.
Yep.
That you just have to have in line if you're going to be successful.
Chris McChesney, in his book 4DX, or the 4 Disciplines of Execution, talks about lead measures and lag measures, and that sometimes people focus on the lag measure when they should be focused on the lead measure. As an easy example, obviously, would be weight loss. If you just look at weight, that's a lag measure. But if you focus on your numbers of diet and exercise, and how much, how many calories you're putting in and how many you're burning off, that's probably going to hit the lag measure down the road. Is that kind of what you're referencing? You got to focus on the main thing.
Yes. And so weight loss, for instance, it's more about the daily routine than it is about what you're trying to accomplish, right?
Yep.
At some point, if you want different results, you have to start focusing on something different. You've got to change what you're looking at. You've got to change your intake. You got to change your output. Something has to change for you to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. I just look at teams of people, and it's so interesting to me. So everybody, if you're in a larger company, you have an HR department. If you're a small business, the business owner is the HR department, right? But just think of HR, human resources. How do you define that term? And then you break it down to just, how do you define resources, right? Is resources something you own or something you depend on? Think of natural resources: air, soil, water, animals, plants. Those are things we need to live, right? So I like to think of human resources, the team, more like resources that life depends on. And then you take some of those natural resources. Think of water. Like, we can't live without water, but stagnant water can kill you because of enzymes and bacteria. Does that make sense?
Love the analogy.
So your team is a living, breathing entity that can be healthy, and it can be thriving, or it can be sick. You can add one member to a team that is a cancer, that will take something that you need to live, like water, and make it stagnant, right? And so hiring is not an exact science. All of us who are hiring managers make mistakes. And so there's things that a business, one of the philosophies that our CEO has really impressed upon the management team in the past year is there should be no manager in our company that should be the only interviewer. Because we're all stakeholders, right? And so when you think about the water analogy, and water can be required to live, or it can kill you, adding a member of the team is a big deal because it can either help that team thrive or it can kill the morale and kill the service levels and be a cancer. And it's just hard. It's easy to add people to a team. It's hard to exit them from the team. That's not as easy.
Yeah, to that end, you guys are now, obviously a publicly traded company that, it's probably for a small business owner out there, you have a cancer, you pull the trigger quickly and say, oh, you're done, you're out today. Probably a little bit harder. There's probably a process by which you have to let someone go. Does that mean that the philosophy for you is much slower to hire? And how do you evaluate those? I know you said it earlier that you were really focused. I mean, it's hard, the talent pool coming in is, you could have a talent coming from another organization, but if it's an entry-level position, could well be someone who doesn't know title at all. Are you then doing more personality assessment at that time, making sure that they've just got the goods, the X factor, the kind of the nous to be a good person that you can build and grow?
Yeah, I think the best thing you can do if your business is the size of where you at least have some sort of a management team, more than just a boss, like I was describing earlier. But when you engage that team, the open position might be a position that would report up through just one of those managers. But to involve at least multiple managers on your team in that hiring process, you're going to make fewer mistakes, right? They may see something you didn't see. They may ask a question in their interview that you're not asking in your interview. And I think that input, first of all, it really helps as people enter and exit your organization to at least have your leadership team on the same page about who's being added or subtracted from that team is key.
Does that come back to core values? I mean, at the end, your company has to have a rock to stand on, right? And if you don't know who you are, what you stand for, it's hard to gauge whether someone's a fit. Is that fair?
Exactly. I mean, that is it, but it is not an exact science, and you are going to make mistakes. And it is knowing what that bar is, and in hopes then are they likely to be a good fit, right? And all you want to do is hedge your bets.
So give me a glimpse.
Like I said, I don't view human resources, like I hate the term human capital. I mean, human capital sounds like an asset you own, right? And I like to think of it being more of a resource you have to live and breathe, right? And it just views, I mean, you don't want to get everything out of people that you can get out of them, right? You want it to be people that breathe life into an organization, and people that, the higher up you go, the bigger your company gets, the more spread out you get. It just results in the more problems you deal with, right? I have many more bad days in my current role than I did when I just owned my own business with one location and 10 people. I have a lot more problems now. And some of those are internal, some of those are external, some of those are cyclical or seasonal. There's just a lot more problems, which means I have to depend on a lot more people to solve those problems. And so I don't like human capital. I only like human resources if you're thinking of the term resources in the appropriate way. But I don't view any member of this team to be like something we own or something that's just a workhorse. Like
your longevity of talent speaks for itself there. I mean, you guys have most of your employees, at least in the branch and offices that I've had interaction with, are long-standing employees.
Yeah, and I would still think our washout rate is too high. I would still think our turnover rate is too high, but it's something you constantly look at. Thank you for saying that. It means a lot that's what it would look like. But this is not easy, and that's really what business is. It is a dependence upon people, internal and external, to make the thing work. It's just like my relationship with you. I mean, we depend upon you to stay open, right? And then you depend upon the team of people we have servicing you to keep you coming back. Like these relationships and dependencies are the only thing that make it work. You know, it's not the company brand. It's not me as a leader. It is all that stuff has to work for you, or you're going to go someplace where it does. And it's not always perfect. What's made our relationship great is, you know, I'm the guy you call and yell at when it's not working for you, right? And believe me, those days happen, right? We've had some very serious conversations over the years because something had to change for you. And I'm either the type of person that partners with you and listens and tries to make it better, or I'm rigid and a guy you can't do business with any longer.
So relationships, couldn't agree more, is business. As a business owner, relationships, everything. One of our core values is communication. Can you speak a little bit to how you value good communication within the organization, and how do you promote that?
Yeah, so when I hired a coach, we did talk about just a basic way that I was going to communicate. And at the time travel was a part of that. But there were some basics. My senior leadership team, obviously I speak to each individual member of that team on a daily basis with things specific to their area of responsibility. But that team gets together at a minimum, a set call every other Friday, and it's scheduled for the entire year. We've been doing this for 5 years with that team. We've yet to cancel or postpone one call. We've had it every single time because it's just when we get together. Obviously, they have one-on-one meetings with the people reporting up through them. I have one-on-one meetings with them as well each month. And then every division, every city for us has a leader, a division president. And once a month, I have a call with every division president in the East at the same time, because there's just certain things you want to cascade down through the layers of management. And some of these things take time, and sometimes it's one agenda item and sometimes it's 5 agenda items. But we all know we have that one call a month. So that if I'm dealing with HR or IT or finance and accounting, as things happen throughout the month that I know the broader team needs to be involved with, I will just schedule them. My next monthly call is on this date. I'll send the invite and they just automatically get on the agenda. But you have to find things that work for everyone and not be too rigid. And just like I said earlier, now that the pandemic has hit and the travel that I was relying upon and all that communication that has now gone away for a significant period of time, that's created a void. Like I have to replace that with something. I'm probably going to replace it with something much cheaper, much easier on me, not having to get up early and stay out late with all the travel. And it'll probably end up being better communication. I think Microsoft Teams and Zoom are one of the most effective things to support business that we've seen in a long time. I mean, I'm trying to think of something equal to that. This has been significant. It's a tool that almost every business can use and use it as much as you want, and it's very affordable. And it's much better than traveling. You can meet with more people in a day. You can have larger meetings. I mean, think of the type of meetings that I would have. You know, this stuff costs tens of thousands of dollars to get everybody to a central location and get everybody a room and get their flights and cater it. And I mean, that stuff was really expensive. We can now do those things at zero. Like it's all about scheduling.
Yeah, I don't think we've had anything. I mean, you mentioned Zoom. I don't think since email came out in 94, 95, since I don't think anything, you know, that was obviously revolutionary. I mean, everyone has, I kind of view it as, when you get to the point where it infiltrate, smartphones, everyone now has one. Email, now everybody has. So those are huge, monumental societal shifts. I think Zoom's at the point now where it's become an action verb and it's become so commonplace for business that you're right. I think it's been a long time since we've had something that impactful. Tell me a little bit about so meetings are important, Marty. How do you conduct quality meetings? What are the things you rely on or focus on to make sure that your team is getting the most out of it? Do you have a scribe? Do you have a note taker? Do you make sure everyone has takeaways? Like, how do you get the most out of your meetings to make sure that it's not just a kind of a passive experience?
There are a lot of different philosophies on this. And I can just share what has worked best for me is when I am extremely prepared, meetings go well. And when I am going through the motions, meetings don't go so well. And so I think it's mostly on me to make sure that I'm not wasting people's time, and that I am constantly trying to earn the buy-in of the team. Don't force feed initiatives. But my job is to get buy-in. And when I do a poor job of that, people push back and rollouts don't go smoothly. And you know what I'm saying? But when you really spend the time to get the buy-in of that team of why it's important, why it's important to the team, why it's important to the organization, why any change. And if I don't get the buy-in, I circle back around. There's a subsequent meeting. I approach it differently. I don't ever leave that meeting thinking my team doesn't get it. I always leave that meeting, I blew it, and I'm going to have to approach this differently to earn their buy-in. I don't know if that answers your question, but for me, even a conference call, I'm never going through the motions. I am extremely prepared. One of the tricks I learned a long time ago is not only do I have a call, and now it's easier on Teams or Zoom because I can record the call and anybody that wasn't able to attend can, watch it at their own convenience or refer back to it later. So now we kind of record those calls. But before that, when it was just an old-fashioned conference call, before the meeting, I would write a narrative of everything I was going to say. And then as soon as the meeting concluded, I would send the written narrative to anybody that attended to say, here's what I just said to you. And then that made it hard because I had to sound like I wasn't reading when I was having on the actual call. But it worked really well. And then when I did travel, I would see certain things on people's pegboards or on their desk, and I could see what they highlighted and what, you know what I mean? I could almost track the moment in time I earned their buy-in because of just paying attention.
Marty, this has been an awesome experience for me. I think it just showcases the level of professionalism and diligence that's taken you. Clearly you've been a wonderful resource for Stewart to rely on. I'm not going to say capital. I have to use the word resource now. Some total gold nuggets to take away from here. Really appreciate your time. And, I know that this will benefit a lot of people out there when they're thinking of, evaluating talent, looking at their HR department and thinking, how do I grow and scale? Thank you so much for your time today. And we will talk again soon.
Thanks, Mark.
You're listening to Mistake-Free Real Estate Radio, the authority in passive real estate investing. No late-night calls, no clogged drains, no tenant nightmares. Take the passive investor's approach to real estate investing and trust a turnkey professional. Learn more at mistakefreerealestate.com. Until next time, remember, you don't get rich from what you earn, you get rich from what you own.